Good morning and welcome to another edition of our Third Way Dialogues. As most of you know, my name is Antjuan Seawright and I have the privilege of being a Third Way Senior Visiting Fellow. It's always so good to see so many of you RSVP and join us for these dialogues. I believe these dialogues will help set us up for not only where we were, help us understand where we've been, but also give us a snapshot to where we must go and where we're headed. And I thank you so much for your continued support. And I thank the Third Way family for the opportunity to continue to have these discussions. When we talk about democratic politics, I like to say to others that it takes a village to raise a child, but it takes a village to keep Democrats. And under that Democratic village, there are several committees. But today I have the fortunate and the privilege of having perhaps two of the most critical representatives from two of the most critical committees we have going into not only next year, but also thinking about governor's races this year. And that's my dear friend, Wendi Wallace, who's the Deputy Executive Director from the Democratic Governors Association, known as the DGA, and my longtime Southern friend from Mississippi, Jessica Knight Henry, who I've worked with for some time now in Democratic politics, who is the Deputy Director at the DSCC, Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, but she's also the head of diversity. And I'm so fortunate to call them both my friends, but most importantly, I'm so thankful that we have two Black women, perhaps the most critical constituency in Democratic politics. We have two of the best representing Black people, but also Black women at the highest levels of the committees. And for that, we all should be proud. Wendi, Jessica, good to see you. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having us.
Wendi, I'll start with you. For those who may not know the Wendi Wallace that I know, and may not know all those colorful things about your background and your story and how you have climbed the ladder to be where you are, give us the Sunday school version of a little bit of that.
Sure. Thank you, everybody. I'm glad to be here. Glad to have so many of you tuned in. The Sunday school version, I will try to keep it short, is, I came to DC in 2007, mostly pretty fresh out of college still. And I had no background in politics, had not, worked on campaigns or done anything like that. I got a job with a coalition lobbying group working on the Dodd-Frank bill, which was like, being thrust into the lion's den and being in charge of whip counts and report outs from lobbyists. And so I was with them from the day the bill dropped in the Senate. That was my first day. I don't recommend that. All the way through the conference at the House and getting it to the president's desk to sign. After that, I went and was working with a donor community for 4 years called the Democracy Alliance. At which point, when I left there, I got a job with Planned Parenthood Action Fund as their PAC manager and eventually became the political outreach director. And that really exposed me to work with all the committees, which is kind of how I ended up at the DGA when I was ready to move on from that. The DGA really wanted me to come on board and kind of help them with some of their partner relationships and relationships internally in DC and with other committees. And so that is what I've been doing since early 2019. And it's been obviously an unanticipated ride from the governor front since then, but it's been good.
Good. Ms. Jessica Knight Henry.
Thank you, Antjuan, and thanks Third Way for having me here today. I got my start actually knocking doors on a governor's race when Tim Kaine ran for his historic bid for governor in 2005. And so I realized that being immersed in politics at that level was really exciting and wanted to do more. And one of the places where I looked around and saw a real lack of diversity was in the fundraising and development space. And so there weren't many Black women, but it was also one of the few places where I saw women leading on the campaign trail. And so I was like, I want to do that. So I was very fortunate to have supportive people around me that put me in touch. I went from Tim Kaine to working with Senator Kent Conrad from North Dakota, and then going to a firm where I worked for consultants who had a myriad of clients, including a number of gubernatorials, Janet Napolitano in Arizona at the time, Jennifer Granholm, and one congressman from New York, Congressman Gregory Meeks. It was through that relationship that I first really bolstered the work that I was doing with the Congressional Black Caucus. And from there went on to be the executive director for the CBC PAC for 6 years, everything from fundraising, thinking about political strategy. And so really had an opportunity at a very young age to just the breadth of what can be done, particularly through the lens of Black people and campaigning. From there, I did a brief stint in the issue advocacy-based world, working at LCV, managing their political action committee and their Give Green program. And from there, decided that I didn't know if I was done with hard side politics forever. And so went to work for a voter registration organization that was focused on building communities of color and increasing the rate of registration there. But that was in 2016. And after having my daughter and just the complete letdown of Trump being elected, realized I couldn't sit on the sidelines anymore and I wanted to play full contact politics again. And from there, I went to the DNC where I was the deputy national finance director and of coalitions and also our Women's Leadership Forum. So that is a journey that I took, and that is what got me to the DSCC. I served last cycle as our political and engagement director, and I'm very honored to be the deputy executive director this cycle and the first time chief diversity and inclusion officer at the DSCC. So.
Very accomplished women, and I'm so proud that they're my friends. So I get to hang out with really, really smart people who know really, really a lot about what they do. Wendi, in order to appreciate where we're going and where we are, we have to know where we come from. Governor's races are sometimes not on everybody's radar screen, but perhaps are so critical and important. Talk about what it was for you working in the 2018 cycle, where we won some of perhaps the most consequential governor's races in decades. Truth be told, we won in places that Democrats lost in 2016, and you were at the nerve center of that work.
Yeah, thank you. I think, you know, the importance of our 2018 wins cannot be overstated. We at the DGA, we really like to talk about how many seats we flipped, but there's so much to the story. I mean, to your point, Antjuan, we were winning in places like Kansas, you know, places where no one really thought that Laura Kelly could pull that race out, and it broke late, but the DGA and other partners were really there to support and be able to push it over the edge. And Governor Kelly has done a great job, has a lot of relationships from the state legislature. And I think we see at the gubernatorial level, candidates and incumbents who can really see the whole field, play the whole spectrum. A lot of them have come from either the House on the congressional side or have come from the state legislature and really understand what it takes to move those bodies. But being able to pick up Nevada, Kansas, Michigan, Wisconsin, Maine, these are things that have made huge differences in people's lives. The majority of Americans are now living under a Democratic governor, and they're better off for it. Teachers have higher pay than they have historically had in our states. Medicare has been expanded. So we're really seeing the fruits of those efforts, and that was long before the pandemic hit, which I could go on and on about, and what that experience was like. But we really And the other thing that can't be overstated is that redistricting is right around the corner. And so there had been a concerted effort on our side to pick up gubernatorial seats, knowing that redistricting was coming in 2020. And so we saw a lot of success and picked up Kentucky in 2019, and were able to hold Louisiana in 2019. So those have been really, really huge. And I think we'll continue to see the impact of that as we move into the next cycle.
Jessica, in 2018, we had success, but not success that so many anticipated. But fast forward to tape in 2020, between the November election and the runoff in Georgia, we were able to really rearrange the furniture of history. Talk about you being in the thick of it, of that cycle, and what that actually meant, and what that has meant for the country, and what it means for Democrats going forward.
Certainly, I think when we look at the maps and the Senate maps over the last few cycles, they've always been difficult. Last cycle, we were defending 12 seats. Republicans were defending 22. So it was probably the most favorable opportunity for Democrats to pick up a number of seats. And we saw that in the places that we came and put a lot of investments, there were really close calls, and we, looked at expanding the map on the march. And I think a lot of data and polling, began to come in that we thought that this was really, really favorable. And to some degree, we were, taken aback when we got those results in November to see that maybe it wasn't as close as it, was projecting to be. But we saw that we still had an opportunity with Georgia. And one of the things I can say, it was one, just the sheer education of about voting in the state of Georgia, the education that went into preparing the base to understand the importance of what flipping the Senate actually meant. I think we'd seen just how stonewalled we'd been over the course of the last cycles with Mitch McConnell at the helm, and just the obstructionists that had been happening for so long. And so what we were left in November was really an opportunity for a jump ball in Georgia, and with the opportunity to pick up 2 seats, which is really just unprecedented. And it was, everybody, was in the game. It took efforts from all over the place, but it truly was an investment in constituency efforts, Black voters very specifically, who knew that it was the power that they had to really get out the vote. And so where we saw was, us competing everywhere, from not just the urban centers of Georgia, but looking at rural counties and understanding the opportunities to register more people in these places, and very specifically shaving off some of the margins. And some of the smaller counties in Georgia, it could have been 8 or 9 votes that helped really secure that lead. And so the takeaway is that we've got to be prepared. Obviously, resources help, and there was a lot of money and again, a lot of efforts, but understanding who our voters are, where they are, and seeking them out, and making sure that we are doing everything possible to protect the vote, which is, looking towards now where we're seeing some of those places where they want to roll that back. But it really was about just mobilizing.
Wendy, that's an excellent segue to talk about the roles of the committees, because people see the DGA, they see the DS, they see the DLCC, et cetera, but they really don't understand that those committees' role is not to run a campaign, but to help augment. So talk about the role of the DGA when it comes to governors.
Yeah, this is actually my favorite part to talk about, mostly because I've seen such a huge evolution for the DGA specifically. We're sort of the baby of, I think we've been in existence less time than the federal committees. And so we've seen this evolution over the last 12 or so years, where the DGA went from just kind of being an ATM where people could easily like get resources, as Jessica pointed out, but to being a real full-scale operation, which our campaigns and gov teams have really been grateful for. So we have, just in the time since I got to the DGA in 2019, we've completely redone our digital shop. We now have not only a full-scale digital team that can consult with on-the-ground campaigns and even incumbent teams to really help them make sure that their email fundraising is right, their social media is right. But we also brought on a digital campaigns person to really help source resumes for digital directors, be able to like say, help people find talent, help with the interview process. We're doing a disinformation training so that people can understand that piece of it. And we are really trying to bring together our partners to educate and help governors, whether it's on the official side or on the campaign side, just really making those connections. And I think for us, we're mirroring that on the finance team, we're mirroring that on the comms team. And for, some of these gubernatorial staffs are incredibly small. It depends, it varies widely state to state. And I think that is one of the things that took me a little time to get used to, is like the team in Wisconsin is hundreds of people. The team in Nevada is like tens of people, like maybe like just 10. So different teams need different amounts of resources, and having us here as people who can help. And again, like just the relationships being so strong in the pandemic was really helpful. When they were just being inundated with stuff, our team could take some of it and say, okay, we're going to synthesize this and streamline it. You will get one email a day from us. It's going to have all this information in it, rather than a million people calling and emailing you. And so we can try to do some of that kind of stuff to just relieve some of the pressure from gubernatorial teams. So it's been a work in progress, but good.
Jessica, so many times people question whether or not they should give to the Senate candidate or give to the committee or give to a PAC. Talk about the work of the DSCC. I was fortunate that you gave me my political deployment papers in the runoff in Georgia, and we went down and we were able to engage with communities of color around the state of Georgia, and we were very fortunate to win those 2 seats. But the work of the DSCC Sunday school version adds some frame and color to it, and why that's important for people to engage not only with the committee but also the candidate too.
Yeah, well, I want to first point out, and this is kind of, in the ecosystem, sort of where the DSCC fits in, is that we are the only organization that's focused on electing Democratic senators, and that can also work directly with candidates. And so to your point, yes, there are a lot of organizations that are out there that focus on work, particularly in Senate battleground states, that are able to either work through issue advocacy or working on voter registration. But we are the only ones that are focused on elected Democratic senators and can work directly with candidates. We are unique to advise these campaigns. Our teams, we focus really hard on people who have experience with whether statewide races or Senate races specifically, who can advise these campaigns to support their operations, maximize their investments, and win. We're also the only organization that can coordinate spending. So we work directly with the campaigns to make very specific investments, which frees up the campaigns themselves to maximize their resources where they're most needed for TV or digital advertising, and where they also can get the lowest unit rate. So, and then we also work with the state parties in a very unique way, what we call transfer down. And so that helps us to make other investments where we can hire key staffers, work with the coordinated teams in each of these states to sort of build out an operation, whether that's press and comm support, research, whatever the campaigns need. And then, of course, investing in GOTV and other field operations as well. And so that's kind of sort of how we see what the committee does, but we also work with these external partners as well to make sure that they are in touch with the campaigns and the candidates, and so that we are, maximizing how voters are touched and engaged in many, many ways. And so the campaigns always need your cash, but there are limits to what you can contribute to those campaigns. And so the committee comes in hand in a very special way, because we can also maximize a lot of resources. And through like our headquarters fund, we provide, as Wendi said, like a lot of that IT support to not only just information, but around IT security. A lot of our campaigns are soft targets in the ecosystem. And so what we can do from our sort of purview is to be able to help and support that, so the campaigns aren't having to rebuild the wheel in that way, but also just to maximize the resources that they have to laser focus on what's important.
For those who have questions, please drop them in the chat and I will certainly get to them. Wendi, talking about now, you have 3 things on your radar screen at DGA that you're monitoring closely. You want to talk through those things. You have 2 very critical gubernatorial races, both in Virginia and New Jersey, and then California.
Sure. I will just say we are full service and fully focused also on 2022, because we have 36.
We're gonna get there.
Okay, I don't want to jump ahead, but I'm just saying we're doing a lot all at once. But for this year, in 2021, yes, we have gubernatorial races in Virginia and New Jersey, and we have been handed by the Republicans a recall in the state of California. So I'll talk a little bit about New Jersey and Virginia first. I think these are always the races that come up right after the presidential and really are a good thermometer check and tell us kind of where voters are, what people are thinking, and show us who has the momentum going into the midterm year. Also, historically, Virginia has gone to the party that is not in the White House. So we have a big job to do in 2021. The McAuliffe team, Terry McAuliffe is our gubernatorial candidate. They are doing an excellent job. It is going to be an expensive race. It is going to be a tight race. I talked to a lot of people who are like, oh, Terry has it in the bag, right? And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, they are working hard. They are putting themselves in a really good position. And I think that the McAuliffe team has something positive to offer and is doing a really good job of talking to Virginians about what he will do for them. But it's going to be a tight race, and it's going to be tight all the way through November, and we are taking it seriously as such. I feel similarly about New Jersey. I think people relax because they feel like, oh, New Jersey is such a Democratic state. Phil Murphy will get reelected, no problem. And I am here to say, 1, New Jersey has not reelected a Democrat as governor in 44 years. That is a thing that people don't really think about. They don't internalize.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was a fun fact that I learned as well this year. And, one of the things, I was talking to the Murphy team yesterday, and they said, the thing people forget is, 4 years ago, Chris Christie was still a popular governor. Like, he was still very popular in the state of New Jersey. Things have changed. And fortunately, Governor Murphy has been doing an excellent job with everything from the economy to handling the pandemic. But this is not a slam dunk. These are going to be difficult races, and we have to treat them seriously and not take our foot off the gas in any way. And so our team and the teams on the ground are committed to doing that. Additionally, in California, so the filing deadline for candidates in California is tomorrow. Ballots drop on August 16th, and the election day is set for September 14th. That is a lot of work in a small amount of time. I believe that the Newsom team is up to the challenge. They have really been great every step of the way, and we're working in close coordination with them. But recalls are tough, and a lot of things are different this time around than the recall that we saw in 2003. But one thing remains the same, which is the construction of the ballot, which is an interesting thing that I have now learned. It's a two-question ballot. Do you believe that Governor Newsom should be recalled is one question, and then there is a list of candidates in the second question where the governor's name does not appear. And so it is an effort in voter education. It is going to be an effort in voter turnout. We are seeing that the Republicans are incredibly enthusiastic about this opportunity. And Democrats are kind of lackluster and honestly quite comfortable. And so we have to turn up the heat and make sure that people are turning out. So if there are any Californians, please vote when you get your ballot. Vote no on the recall, and don't worry about the rest. We are going to work hard and make sure that Governor Newsom remains the governor, and everyone will have a chance to, decide this again fair and square in the re-elect in 2022.
Jessica, while she's focused on these races this year, governor's races also help build capacity or strengthen the work statewide for Senate candidates. Talk about why these two committees are so important in the work they do together, because they both have to do the same thing, turn out people statewide.
Yeah, especially in a midterm, I think coming off the heels of a presidential where there are sort of many layers before you get to not only a Senate campaign, but also to a gubernatorial campaign. But in a midterm, it really is the Senate team sitting on top federally, the gubernatorial races, and the statewide that provides the momentum. And we've got, looking at the map for next, for this cycle, there are a number of what we like to call nesting opportunities for us to collaborate. That's where a coordinated campaign comes well in hand, where the different candidates and campaign teams are able to work together on building that infrastructure and getting the vote out. I think as we're looking at the 22 map, Democrats are defending 14 seats, including 2 that we just picked up from last cycle. That's Senator Kelly in Arizona and Senator Warnock in Georgia. And Republicans are defending 20. That includes 5 open seats in Alabama, Missouri, North Carolina, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. And so what we're seeing is that shaping up to be, quite a stretch map again for us, where we would love to, focus on resources. First and foremost, the DSCC is focused on incumbent protection. And so that is where our focus are. And the good news with that is that if we are able to return every Democrat that's currently in the Senate, we keep the majority. We know that it is a razor thin majority. And so our secondary focus will be expanding that. And looking at the top 10 key races in 22, we're looking at Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, New Hampshire. These are all our incumbents, and Colorado as well. And then looking at some of these open seat and challenger races where North Carolina, which is coming into focus, Ohio, Pennsylvania, where Senator Toomey retired, Wisconsin and Florida. And so those are where we're kind of looking at as far as like the top 10 for this cycle and trying to remain focused on that. But, I think this is a map that we saw Biden do very well last cycle. And I'm sure Wendi will jump in and talk about some of the places where there is some of that overlap with the map that they're looking at as well. And not only just with the the Senate races and even the gubernatorial races, but also a number of really competitive House races as well, because I know we're focused on our respective hats here, but keeping and expanding the majority in the House is equally as important to eliciting the change that we want to see and making sure that Biden's agenda, he's able to do all the things he and our Vice President Kamala Harris.
Wendi, I'm very careful how I use words, but the races for governor in many places that we won in 2018 will perhaps be some of the most consequential of our lifetime. When I think about Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, Arizona, I mean, there's some real opportunities where we have to block and tackle, but there's some opportunities where on paper we will be punching above our weight. Florida as an example. There are also some places where you have Senate races and gubernatorial races on the ballot. Preview for us 2022 from a DGA perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo a lot of what Jessica said. We are primarily focused on incumbent protection. Michigan, Wisconsin, Maine, Kansas, Nevada, Minnesota. These are where the battle is really going to be fought, and we need to hold all of those. And I think at the same time, we want to pick some up. We feel like Arizona is an amazing opportunity for us, of a state that is trending the right direction, and we should be able to win it with strong candidates and hard work. We feel similarly about Georgia. You know, those are like our big pickup opportunities, and they fall in line with the Senate map. There's going to be a lot of attention. We have an open seat in Pennsylvania. Governor Wolf is termed out, and we have a strong candidate there in the Attorney General, and we are going to fight hard and intend to win that. All of this being said, like, none of this is going to be a walk in the park. I think everything about 2022 is going to be harder than 2020, and it's going to be drastically more expensive than 2018. So like, that is the way that we think of it, is like, as we know that these races are crucial, so do our opposition, right? The Republicans are not going to roll over and let us have Pennsylvania. They're going to fight hard. Similarly in, Michigan and Wisconsin, like, we're already seeing the fights. This is what I got into earlier when I jumped ahead, was that we are already on the ground. Campaign teams are already being hired in these 22 states. All of our incumbents now have campaign managers, they have finance directors. Like, the wheels are turning, because it is going to take every single thing that every single one of us has in order to hold these seats and try to pick up some more.
Jessica, for you and the Senate 2022, obviously messengers matter, but message matters a lot more. Talk about message going into 2022 for Senate Dems, in particular when we hear things like critical race theory and defunding the police, and how that can really de-gut a lot of campaigns and throw us off track. So talk about messaging and what you're hearing is important, and how we push back on some of the rhetoric like critical race theory.
Certainly, I think one of the things that's important is to see sort of what got us here. And we saw some success in 2018, where, when Democrats stick to these sort of bread and butter, what we like to call kitchen table issues, that is very successful across the board. And those are issues that cross all demographics. Folks are very concerned about the economic recovery and coming back from the heels of this pandemic, and what it's going to be like, focusing on education, having our kids back in school. And, as the parent of a 5-year-old, like, very much looking forward to having my child back in school. These are the places that we continue to focus on. And we saw a lot of saliency, particularly in Georgia, with the runoff, of focusing on, shots in arms, checks in hand. And we were able to see a Biden administration and a Democratic Senate deliver on that through the American Recovery. And so we know that a lot of folks have short memories, and as this economy rebounds, those are going to be the key issues that we want to stay focused on, and what we know works when we're talking about anywhere from Atlanta to Arizona to rural Pennsylvania. These are what matters to Americans. And so those are the places where we're going to focus. We are monitoring very closely what the ideas of critical race theory and even defund the police and its evolution of it is, a transition of resources. What does that look like? But I think CRT right now is that a lot of people don't know what it is, and it is something that is taught at a very academic level. What we don't want to do is to feed into sort of the Republican disinformation and sort of message bastardization machine, which is what they do, where it really is a non-issue. But at the same time, we don't want to alienate our base by saying, this is a dog whistle. They're talking about race. It is okay to say, we support Black people. We understand what you've gone through. And so threading that needle, particularly in a number of our states, is going to be very, very key. But I think we want to focus on, we want our kids back in schools. We don't want to have to tell teachers what and how to teach. But at the same time, it really can be a distraction. But we are doing all of the research and putting ears, talking to really, really smart people to help us think about what that message is. But we don't want people to have a short memory on what this administration is doing, what a Democratic Senate is doing, and how it is helping people. And we're seeing us get back to quote unquote normal.
Wendi, sometimes what happens at the federal level, success or failure can be have trickle down effect on what happens at state level when it comes to statewide races like governor's race and so forth. So knowing that going into 2022, what type of background color lyrics are we adding to the song when it comes to Democratic governors, in particular in these places where we lost in 16, won in 18, but if history had its way, we are said to have trouble in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this is, I say all the time, our governors and our candidates are putting together the best teams that they can and putting themselves in the best positions that they can. But a lot of what we're running against in 2022 is going to be environmental. And there's no, legislation you can pass or like things you can do to combat what is happening in the larger political environment. And so what happens at the federal level does impact our races. Like there's no way around it. I think particularly on things like, the critical race theory conversations and some of these larger things where I would argue there are concerted efforts around, making sure that this is a topic. And I think we have to strike the balance between letting people see what we are doing for them, like all from top to bottom. Infrastructure bill gets passed, great. It's happening at the state level, how those things get implemented, how the American Rescue Plan dollars are spent. That's happening on a state and local level. And I think people will feel the impacts of that, but to Jessica's point, we have to let them not have short memories. And my concern is we don't know what American day-to-day life is going to look like in the fall of 2022 and how what happened in 2020 will impact it, how, people's moods right now are kind of all over the place. They're like happy to be having a little bit more freedom, but like agitated that not everything is fully open and some people haven't gone back to work and people are struggling to care for their children. It's like a lot of angst right now. Hopefully that will dissipate, but like there's only so much that we can do. And I think the more that we can work together with our counterparts at the federal level to get the mood to be as positive as possible for Democrats and what we're doing, the better it'll be for everyone.
Jessica, you and I have had this conversation offline on so many occasions, but investing, making investments in perhaps the most loyal constituencies within this party is so important. Your role as Chief Diversity Officer at the DSCC is critical to that. The Sunday school version of what you all are doing to make certain that we're making the right investments at the right time in the right places.
Well, part of that is just showing up not, the 2 Sundays before the election at our churches and exploiting that. And so really being present and creating real relationships in states. And so working to build that, I think like a robust voter education program as well, to make sure that people know what a midterm is, what they're voting for, what the opportunities are as well. But to that end, like making sure that we're doing our part, not only hiring diverse staff at the committee level, but on campaigns. We are seeing a number of diverse candidates, particularly Black women, running for Senate seats this cycle, and making sure that cultural competency on the ground is relevant, and that they can show up as their true and authentic selves, because that's how they connect with voters. That's how they engage a base, excite a base. And so really, focusing on those very specifics. And then that also translates to diverse staff, like in the official offices as well. And so it really, at some point you've got to halt the hamster wheel or the Ferris wheel to let someone get on the ride so that it can be in the bloodstream for sure. So it's a lot of work. It's not an easy task. And we've got a lot of races and a lot of talent that has dispersed, whether they've aged out or have gone to the administration or are on Wendy's gubernatorial races. A lot of competition in a lot of places, but really thinking about that those are the opportunities. And again, just really getting to know these communities, working with our external partners. Where are the people on the ground? Who are the people on the ground? Identifying and mapping that to a degree so that we can build those relationships early.
Wendi, I know same for you, because you're, I think, the highest ranking African American at the DGA. I don't care how red or blue the state is, if we do not maximize African American turnout in some of these states, there's no chance in hell for us to have a chance to be positioned to win. So talk about what you all are doing on the investment side in preparation for an election cycle where traditionally people who vote in presidential elections do not always come back out in midterm elections.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough. And one of the things that we are doing is trying to just make sure that we are talking to the Black community and Black voters, similarly, as Jessica said, like early and often. We have really had a concerted effort around making sure they're part of our focus grouping, our polling, because like you want to be able to see early if you have a problem. And that is really something that we have focused on in southern states. Like it was a big part of Louisiana. You can't win Louisiana if you're not communicating with Black people. Same with North Carolina. We watch those margins incredibly closely. And I think there are a lot of conversations about efforts to do more. Okay, how do you take what we did in 19 and 20 and build on it for 21? How do we make it bigger for 22? And, for us, it's a little bit different in every state. And the relationships are also different in every state. What works in Louisiana does not work in Michigan or Wisconsin. And the governors are just they're different people and have different relationships. And so we have to also lean into that authenticity. But we are pulling out every stop and trying to get as deep and be as communicative as possible.
My last thought process or thought question for you all, and I'll let you go because I want y'all to win these races. Jessica, I'll start with you. Why are organizations like Third Way and other external partners so important for the overall success of the DSCC, but also the direction of the U.S. Senate?
Certainly. I mean, I think Third Way very specifically, like you guys are able to do a lot of the research that helps us with not only sort of messaging on the ground, but that really sort of sets the tone for what the committee and our other partners are thinking around key issues and how those issues reach saliency during an election cycle. And with other partners, whether, you know, they have affiliates on the ground or are working with specific demographic groups, like it allows us to connect again with voters. And at the end of the day, we don't win elections without people voting. And so whatever we can do in that space, whether it's around, you know, voting rights and monitoring voting rights challenges in a number of places and being eyes and ears, and having a place where, you know, we can come together, we're allowed to make sort of these sort of real key decisions. And so all of the work, you know, we refer to it as an ecosystem. You hear that term thrown around a lot, but everyone has their role. And at the end of the day, you know, we can't be a very dynamic orchestra if we're not playing to the tune of the same music. And so we appreciate the work, not only of Third Way, but other partners in the space.
Wendi, same for you.
Oh, this one is a tough question, but I just believe you have to meet people where they are. And in order to do that, we need to be in as many different places and spaces as our voters. And Third Way is a huge part of that. I think they reach an audience that does not have a lot of overlap with some of our other partners. And so for me, it's always about how can we get our message to somebody new? And going to multiple audiences is a huge part of that. I think the flip side, which is less electoral, is on the governing side. You know, Third Way has a lot of research that is helpful, a lot of information that they share with us and that we're able to share with gubernatorial teams that they appreciate. And being able to brief on substance it's great to have a partner that can kind of do it all, can help you reach electoral audiences and voters, but also help on the substance. And so we always appreciate that.
Ladies, I'm so proud to call y'all my friends. I'm so thankful that the work you're doing, forget about for this Democratic Party, forget about for the sake of having numbers, but I thank you for what you're doing to help keep this country together, because the work at the DGA and the work at the DSCC literally is serving as the glue keeping this country together, and I'm so thankful. To my Third Way friends who joined us today, we're so grateful, we're so thankful. We'll see you guys soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.